Back after lunch. I know this is usually the hardest part. We're trying to wake up from our food coma. My name is Kallol Ray, Director of Automation and Assurance. And I think very shortly I'm going to have a different title, but let's not talk about that. Well, to continue with the IoT theme from this morning, I have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Wang, co-founder and CTO of Zingbox, an IoT security company. Dr. Wang received her PhD in electrical engineering from Stanford University. She also authored a book titled Women Executives in Silicon Valley. So I was talking to Dr. Wang over lunch, and I assume Zingbox is a technology that goes on devices, the individual devices, and she politely said no. Apparently it works at a network level. So without further ado, let's hear from Dr. Wang.
Thank you for the introduction, Kallol, and also thank you for the invitation, Ramesh. So here are the there we go. Here are the three questions we're trying to address today. First of all, what are the unique things about IoT, and why the current security solution is not enough? And if that's the case, what shall we do to protect IoT devices? And before we get to these topics, I'd like to say a few words about Zingbox. So we are about 2 years old startup in Silicon Valley. We came out of Stanford accelerator called StarX. So we're funded by Stanford StarX Fund and also supported by several CEOs and founders of public security companies. So we are very happy to see these experts all support our vision that we need more effective solutions to protect IoT devices. And as Kallol mentioned, we provide IoT security solutions for enterprises without touching each end devices. We are mainly protecting these devices within your network at the network level. So IoT is a big word, so everybody is talking about IoT. And we think there are three specific characteristics unique about IoT devices that very related to our IoT security solutions. The first one is we all know there are going to be so many devices, and the most important thing is there are going to be so many different kinds of devices. And the total number of IoT devices combined are going to be a lot more than the number of PCs and cell phones we have today. Even though we're going to have so many devices and so many different kinds of devices, but actually for each device, it's usually have very limited resources in terms of CPUs, bandwidth, memory, and security capability. For example, it's very hard to install an antivirus software on your digital door lock. And then the third thing is most of these devices are actually 24/7 on, connected to the network, which increases security risk. And at the same time, lots of these devices are actually at critical infrastructure or can be life-threatening. So the security risk is actually, the stake is actually higher. So let's take a look at how we do security nowadays. We usually have two main parts. One is at the end device. We have antivirus software on each laptop. And we also have firewall at the network layer. And it's challenging for IoT because for most of the IoT devices, at the device level, we don't have much protection, or it's very hard to download the agent, to download the antivirus software, to have these devices to protect themselves. And then firewall becomes the single line of defense. Even for firewall, because all these devices within the network are constantly going to their server, for remote maintenance, for debugging. So they're actually poking more and more holes on the firewall. So the firewall is not going to be as effective as before either. Another way to look at the current way of doing security is for all these very high-flying security companies, what they're actually mainly doing is all trying to catch malware, trying to catch the bad guys. Okay, if this bad guy come to your house once and steal your stuff, and then I draw a picture of this bad guy, which we call signature, and then next time he's going to a different house, I can easily catch him. So lots of the solutions are actually signature-based. It works well because for the current platforms, we have limited number of platforms. We only have probably a handful of standard operating systems. So the malware that works on your laptop is going to work well on my laptop as well. But we think as the characteristics we mentioned about IoT before, we think it's going to be very challenging for IoT because the malware that works on your digital door lock can be very different from the malware that works on your Nest thermostat. So instead of a homogeneous environment, we're going to have a lot more heterogeneous environment. And we think this catching malware method is not going to be very effective. But instead, as we mentioned, for these IoT devices, they are actually purposely built for limited functionalities with very little human intervention. So their behavior actually is relatively simple. For example, your Nest thermostat is only supposed to go to one or two websites. And the only thing it does to measure your temperature, upload your temperature data to a cloud, and take whatever control about the Nest programming. So based on that, is actually we can, instead of taking a blacklist approach, we can actually take a whitelist approach. Instead of trying to catch the bad guy to have a signature of the bad guy, we can actually monitor the normal behavior of your IoT device, which is a relatively simple network behavior. But the challenge for IoT is actually the scalability. How you can scale up to tens of billions of devices and still be able to protect these devices. So there are two ways of doing security before. One is you can think of it as the Great Wall in China. We're trying to build a wall to do the segmentation, to isolate. So probably the most secure way is to not connect it with anybody. So we're trying to build taller wall, we're trying to build thicker wall. But with IoT, it's not going to work very well because the purpose of IoT is bringing us lots of convenience so that everybody and every device is going to be connected. And that's an inevitable trend. So segmentation, isolation is not going to be the best way to do security anymore. Then another one is the signature, the most wanted guy, and that's not going to be very effective either. Then what would be the best way for IoT security? And we consider moving forward, you have to assume there's no secure wall that can absolutely block all the bad guys out. So you're going to see in the same room some good guys, some bad guys. They're always going to mix together. So we think using machine learning to identify everybody's normal behavior, and from their behavior, we can do the analysis from all the data we collected from the network. We can do the analysis and find out from its behavior point of view who's the bad guy is the way to go. And also that's the first thing. And second thing is also we cannot assume that we'll never be hacked. We probably should assume no matter how good security we have, we'll always be compromised. Some nodes are going to be compromised. So the key question is how we can detect the hacks, detect the breaches as soon as possible instead of waiting for 200 days. So we think for IoT security, there are 4 things we see from our customers they are most interested in and most needed today. First of all is visibility. When we talk to, for Zingbox, we talk to lots of customers in healthcare, in manufacturing, in general enterprises, and in education. And pretty much every CISO, Chief Information and Security Officer you talk to, how many IoT devices do you have in your network? Nobody could give an answer. And what's the status of these IoT devices? Nobody knows either. So the first question they're most interested in, how to discover these IoT devices. And because before, we only have a handful of devices on each network, but moving forward, we're going to have tens of thousands of millions of devices on each network. So we have to have an automatic way of identifying all these devices and clustering all these devices. And then the second step is to, once we identify and discover and identify these devices, we can use machine learning to monitor their normal behavior. What's their traffic pattern? What's their device profiling? What's their normal behavior? And then based on that, whenever we see any abnormal behavior, we can do the security assessment to tell you every day, every hour, every minute how secure this device is and what's its security risk. Then the fourth thing is the protection. If we spot any abnormal behaviors, we can send you alert, we can do quarantine. And for all these 4 steps, actually, we can use machine learning to address these issues. And one great thing about IoT devices, because it's have relatively simple behavior for each device, so it's actually perfect for machine learning algorithms, because machine can easily pick up and learn the behavior of each device, where the challenge is how to scale up, which is very challenging for human being, but can be a great thing for machine to do. So here's an example of how we do anomaly detection at one of our customer sites. So this is an example of a security camera that does backup every 24 hours. But at one time spot, we found it's sending huge amount of total bytes per hour. But based on this, so one problem for the current anomaly detection is they send huge amount of false positives. So eventually people just give up. For example, back a while ago, for this incident happened at Target. Actually, hackers went through the HVAC machine to get to the POS machine, point of sales, to send out all the credit card information. To give the current security companies credit, actually one of the top security companies actually identified the issue. But the problem is it sent out thousands of alerts every day, so people just ignore all of them. So the very important thing to do anomaly detection is to reduce the false positive rate. So there are lots of methods we're using at Zingbox to dramatically reduce the false positive rate. And one of them is actually, instead of just looking at one parameter or bluntly looking at the traffic pattern, we have the context of the IoT devices. We know what kind of device it is, we know what its normal behavior it is, and we know what kind of, we call them features, because we have like hundreds of features, but we need to identify which are the key features and which are the correlation among the features. So not just look at the total number of bytes sent out, but also the number of URLs and number of connections per hour. And based on all these 3 parameters, then we know it is not a normal backup session. Even though during some backup session, there are some deviations, but we know this is, we know pretty sure this is a breach. So here, we actually see lots of issues in healthcare. lots of healthcare machines, IoT machines, are actually still using Windows 98 without any patches. It's because of this HIPAA compliance, and people are concerned, if I patch something, I have to go through this lengthy process to make sure I'm still compliant. And actually, we found in healthcare, not only the technology, they are not yet using the most updated technologies yet, but also because of all these IoT devices coming in, including X-ray machines, MRI machines, and the sensor on the bed, and also the IV pumps, the bedside monitors, from big, small. They belong to all different departments. For the regular computers and servers and your cell phones, they belong to IT department. But for all the medical-related equipments, they actually belong to a group called biomed, or clinical engineering. And for some building-related, like surveillance cameras and things like that, they belong to security. So who eventually is responsible for the overall security of all these devices in the hospital? And the scary part is all these devices are all trying to connect to each other, especially with this digital patient record movement. And they are all eventually connect back to the patient record. And actually, the number shows each single patient record is sold 20 times higher price at black market compared to your credit card record, because it contains your social security number, your health insurance, your medical history. So the hackers have lots of motivation to use these IoT devices as a stepping stone to get to the patient's record. And also, needless to mention about the ransom, and there's number shows every year hospitals are blackmailed for over $1 billion ransom, and most hospitals just simply pay for them. So there are lots of issues we see in healthcare, and so lots of CISOs we talk to, they are very enthusiastic about having an effective IoT security solution. And the very first step they really value is, if your program can show me what the IoT devices I'm having right now, so that I know how to manage them, I know how to configure them. That'll be very, very valuable. And also another sector we look into a lot is manufacturing. So it used to be within the manufacturer floor, it's not really connected to the external. So it's usually just one or two supervisors have the key to this production line. But now, because all the machines are getting connected online, and all the machine vendors manufacturing trying to do the remote maintenance and debugging to increase the productivity and efficiency, so all the machines are connected, then the manufacturers feel like, okay, we don't know who's accessing our production line, who's getting all our design information, who's getting all the critical data. And actually, one of customers who actually already had very high-end of security products deploy our product, and then next day we found so in the production line you have this PLC, programmable logic controller, and in charge of multiple sensors, and then another PLC in charge of another group of machines. And so these PLCs are actually only supposed to talk to its own sensors that it's in charge of. But actually we found one PLC was basically scanning all other PLCs and actually even talking through a server to the external sites. And for that, none of the existing firewall could detect it, because lots of it is all the activities within your network. So we see moving forward, we're going to see more and more incidents like that. It's like both good guys and bad guys are all sitting in the same room. Then how do you detect the bad guys? So that's where we see artificial intelligence, machine learning, the algorithm, the data analysis are going to play a major role. And the good thing is, because all these connected IoT devices, so that we can get lots of data that we couldn't get before, or we couldn't get so fast before. And one manufacturer we talked to, they said, oh, we used to have workers by the end of the day take a notebook and walk around the production floor to write down all the numbers. But now, because all the devices are connected, we can see them real time. So here's a kind of a summary for IoT security. And we see these three things are very critical for providing IoT security. The visibility of IoT devices, especially with this huge amount of devices and all different kinds of devices. And then the second is the security protection, the real security assessment and how to protect all the devices within your network. And we believe, we see some solutions that are trying to do something on each end devices. I think at some point, some of these solutions are going to be very valuable too, but we see the scalability is one of the biggest challenges for IoT devices. So we think at the network layer, monitoring the traffic to protect all the end devices within your network without having to either install agent or do anything on the end device would be a more scalable solution. And the third one is appliance. Actually, earlier this year, at the beginning of this year, FDA has already rolled out a draft to tighten the requirements for medical devices security. And we see and through the year, actually, we've been seeing more and more hacking incidents for IoT. Actually, just a couple of weeks ago, there has been the largest DDoS in history that mostly from the cameras and the DVRs and are turned into botnet to attack. And we think this is just the very beginning, because from all the IoT devices we collected in our lab, most of them don't have very good security, and most of them we can easily hack them through within minutes, and most of them don't have the packet, the payload, they don't even have the packet encrypted. So we see there are lots of holes there, lots of opportunities, and lots of challenges there as well. So that's about it. And thank you very much. Any questions?
So we have some time for a few questions. Fire away.
I was wondering if Zingbox also supports both IPv4 and v6?
Yes.
So both?
Yes, both.
So right now it's got compatibility to detect IoT v6 and
Yes.
IoT v4?
Yes,
Excellent.
absolutely. Yeah, I before Zingbox, I was at Cisco for many years at Cisco CTO office, and the very first project I did there was working with the Cisco fellow who actually created IPv6, and that was many years ago, to promote IPv6. And back then, nobody cared about IPv6. Nobody wanted to work on IPv6, so he was just stuck with me. So first thing I do at Zingbox, make sure we support IPv6.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes.
Thank you very much for coming today. One of the questions I had was, when you are using the whitelisting-based technology and you're looking for anomalies, how do you make sure that a computer isn't already compromised? Because then that would provide extremely incorrect results.
Yeah, that's a very good question. If the device is already compromised, what we are mainly looking for is just the behavior. We monitor its network behavior. So until it's doing something abnormal, for example, the Nest thermostat, actually we did see one Nest thermostat is supposed to go to its server, but it was pinging somebody else. Then once we see that, we can either send an alert or stop it. Yes.
So my question is, what is the baseline for what normal is? That's my question.
Okay, there are several ways we do baseline. For example, we have a virtual appliance that you put right next to your switch. So we use the mirror port to listen to the traffic going through the switch. And then after some edge intelligence, we do some local processing and send the critical information up to our cloud. So at our cloud, we actually say, for example, if we're monitoring X-ray machines, your hospital, maybe you have 5 X-ray machines and one of them is compromised. But we have data from other X-ray machines and also from X-ray machines from other hospitals. So we know what normal behavior for X-ray machine is supposed to be.
Okay. And then, so I assume that for if you needed to add a program to a computer that hadn't been on any other computer, it would be added to that VM, and then you guys would scan the traffic from there to see what the new program created?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Any other questions? I think.
I'll just project. So last year I presented here at CyberSEED, and I just wanted to see if you had the latest status on maybe Zigbee Pro. I know there's a 3.0. There's a bunch of issues with Zigbee Pro, security-wise, and how keys need to be managed differently than they currently are and distributed, maybe with a third party. Have you dealt with that at all?
Yeah, actually, I think for IoT security, there are many layers and also different verticals. And what we deal with is mainly at the IP layer, at the IP layer, at the network layer. And there are lots of link layer, physical layer protocols, and we don't work with that much. Yeah.
So Jim just dreams about Zigbee. Okay.
I love what you're doing here, particularly for the larger scale IoT deployments like you'd see in industrial or hospitals, as you mentioned. Have you explored taking this same technology, given that you have the existing investment here, and moving that down market even so far as to be able to deploy something similar to this on a home network to be able to detect when somebody's personal Nest thermostat or Smart Hub or Alexa or any of these other types of devices start misbehaving?
Very good question. That's why we need to talk to Comcast. Yeah, actually, when we started, very good question. This is actually a solution can be applied to both consumer side and enterprise side. And actually, when we started this company, we were debating we want to go for consumer, work with ISPs, or we want to go for enterprise. But after some exploration, we see even though consumer has this huge market, ISP has this huge market, but the first movers are actually enterprises. Because they have liability issues. So they're more willing to spend the resource, spend the money to make sure all their IoT devices are secured. But we definitely see there's huge opportunity at the consumer, especially for the recent incidents of the DDoS attack. I think after these couple of incidents, I think all the ISPs should have a lot more motivation to make sure, to protect all the home IoT devices. Yes. It's absolutely applicable, yeah.
All right. Is that it?
One more.
Okay.
Who are your big corporate laterals? Competition in the segment?
Where's the question? Oh, okay. What's the question, sorry?
Who are your big corporate laterals? Competition laterals? Is it a land cope type of outfit?
You mean who?
Competition. Who's the biggest competition?
Well, I think there can be big companies and small companies. Big companies, say for example, I was at Cisco many years. Cisco can be a competitor, and all these security companies, Fortinet, Palo Alto Networks, FireEye, all these security companies. And now we also start seeing a whole bunch of Israel startups coming up. But I think the question is, so everybody who's interested in security can potentially come out and provide an IoT security solution, and all can be our competitors. But first of all, we think IoT security is such a huge market, a huge landscape. And we actually hope more people can pay attention to it and start working on it. For example, we know several large companies have been trying to put resources in, but the movement pace is not as fast as we hoped. And we actually definitely need lots of big companies, small companies to work together to either form standards and form consortia to move this together. And we think at least we consider ourselves as one of the very first started working on this problem 2 years ago. Back then, all these analysts, including Gartner, we couldn't even find a total addressable market analysis. But for the past year or two, we actually see lots of momentum, lots of attention, and lots of analyst report focusing in this area. Actually, we think that's a good thing. So we see we have two main advantages. One is we have our own algorithms that we have very strong team, came out of Stanford, came out of Cisco, and we've been working on this for quite a while. And secondly, we have deployed our software applications for solutions for about a year, and we have collected a huge amount of data and insights.
Great.
Does that
Well,
answer
thank
your
you very
question?
much, Dr. Wang. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.